So good morning, everybody. My talk is going to be about the interplay between spatial codes and semantic memory. Spatial navigation is clearly one of the most relevant cognitive abilities that we share with other animals. And it's really useful when we plan our behavior to know where things are in the space, where different places are located, and what are the different distances between these places and the directions. And in the field of spatial memory, this internal knowledge or model of the surrounding space has been named a cognitive map. And it has been shown that it is based on the activity of spatially tuned neurons called place cells and grid cells, and actually a bunch of other cells, that fire to represent the individual's location in space. It has been shown that these cells in the human brain are located mostly in the hippocampal formation and in the medial prefrontal cortex. But surprisingly, in the few years back, it has been shown that the same areas are actually activated following the same modulation during tasks that are not spatial in nature, or at least while processing non-spatial information, like when participants process morphing visual objects, or even when they are engaged in abstract decision-making tasks. So this led to an intriguing proposal that it basically states that in humans, spatial codes are recruited or recycled to support more abstract or conceptual thinking. And we use the same spatial codes to navigate among concepts in memory. This led to the idea of a cognitive map of the concepts that are relevant to the task at hand, or in other words, a cognitive map of the task space, either physical or conceptual. Now, of course, there are some problems, and this theory has to face the high complexity of human concepts. Our conceptual knowledge is usually organized into categories of multisensory objects that are constructed, manipulated, memorized using language. And even in the very simple case of cats and dogs, it's really difficult to define what is the space of these concepts, what is their distance, what is their spatial arrangement that we can use to find the direction of movement. Fortunately, during my PhD, I had the opportunity to collect an fMRI data where participants learned novel concepts, and these concepts were categories of multisensory objects. We created 16 audiovisual objects like the one that is depicted here, and these 16 objects all shared the same shape, but they varied in their size and in the pitch of an associated sound. On these two axes, we divided the 16 unique combinations of these two features into 4 categories, and we named each category with an abstract name. Now, it gave us 2 advantages, 2 important things. The first one is that we met the criteria of human-like concepts, so these are categories with names. And second, we can actually master the spatial arrangement of these concepts basing on the underlying perceptual space. We trained 25 participants for 9 days in a non-spatial delayed match to category name task where they learn to map each object to the correct name. And before and after learning, we collected fMRI data, bold fMRI, and in particular the activity patterns evoked by the presentation of either objects or words. And we reasoned that these pseudo-random sequences of objects and words, the participants were performing a one-back task, were conceivable as moving in the different places or regions of this highly controlled, although artificial, semantic space. And we could actually look for some signature of a cognitive map. So the first thing that we did was to look for the very first and key ingredient of any map, that is the representation of the distances between the elements of the environment that the map attempts to replicate. So in our case, for instance, the category gull would be much closer to the category moss in light of the fact that it shares one feature with that, one sensory feature, while it might be further to the category care because it shares no features. We applied a whole brain fMRI adaptation analysis, and we found a single significant cluster in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex only after learning. To confirm the results, we applied in this ROI a model-based RSA that should give us complementary information. So we analyze here the distributed pattern of activity, and basically we constructed a model of the distance between the concepts, and we correlated it with the neural dissimilarity matrix. And we found that this correlation was significant after learning, but not before. And finally, we implemented the model-based representational similarity analysis in a whole brain searchlight, and we still found only a significant cluster in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. Next, we move to the second information that we wanted to test, the second hypothesis, and it was, we looked for direction-based code. And in particular, we looked for a very specific signature of direction, that is the hexadirectional grid code that directly follows from the presence of grid cells in mammalian brain. It has been shown in 2010 that the presence of grid cells can be inferred using bold fMRI during spatial navigation tasks. So we implemented an analysis that is similar to the one used by Christian Döller and Neil Burgess in 2010. The only difference is that we focused on the multivariate signal. Now, for time reason, I'm not going into the details. I'll just give you an idea. It's actually pretty simple. So if we assume that there is an hexadirectional modulation, let's say that I represent this assumption as the red sinusoidal, that it states that every time you're moving in two directions that are at multiple of 60 degrees one to each other, you are going to evoke in a brain region that contain grid cells the very same activity. And this is a situation that we don't have in our experiment. But when you have two directions that diverge from perfect alignment, the different bold activity that these directions will evoke is proportional to the degree of divergence between the two directions in the 60-degree periodic space. So we can construct a model of all the possible differences or distances in the 60-degree space between all our movement directions, and we can use this model as to compute a correlation with the neural dissimilarity matrix. So again, is model-based RSA. We applied this analysis in the ventromedial prefrontal cluster, and we did not find any significant correlation. But when we implemented it in a whole brain searchlight, we found a significant cluster in the right entorhinal cortex at coordinates that are really, really close to the one reported by Döller and Burgess in 2010 when participants were navigating the physical space. As crucial controls, we first of all verified that the same modulation was not present before learning, and it's this bar here, and that other control periodicities like 4-fold, 5-fold, and 7-fold periodicities were not correlating significantly. Finally, we wanted to see, as purely visual purposes, whether we could reconstruct from the neural data a faithful bidimensional representation of our space. So we have here on your left the predicted semantic space with the spatial arrangement and the distance model. In the middle column, you should see the average neural dissimilarity matrix before learning, and on the right, the reconstructed semantic space before learning using just multidimensional scaling in MATLAB. And of course, before learning, there was no relevant information here, but after learning, it was pretty cool, and we could actually obtain something more meaningful. So to sum up, distance and direction-based representational codes seem to be recruited also when participants process novel concepts in a controlled semantic space. And in our specific case, these concepts were multisensory, categorical, labeled, and crucially, they were presented discontinuously as separate and discrete entities. So the idea of a cognitive map of conceptual task space might be more than a metaphor. However, now we have, of course, to face the complexity of human conceptual knowledge. So as a next step, we want, first of all, to replicate these results with well-known classes of objects. And we have to face the great problem of multidimensionality. So how do we navigate conceptual environments with more than 2 relevant dimensions? And so far, we thought about 2 possible alternatives. It's just speculation. So first of all, there might be some sort of cognitive compression, like a reduction to 2 dimensions at a time via attentional amplification. I think there is a preprint online by Bradley Love and Cranston, something about that in prefrontal cortex. Otherwise, there might be some multidimensional representational code that we haven't discovered yet, and it's worth investigating. So thank you very much. If you have any question, you can also stop by my poster later on today. Thank you very much.